Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we're going to be talking some Dynasty trades that I believe are some must buys or maybe some must sells you should be doing before the NFL draft. Again, a lot of this is going to be based off the fact that the draft has not happened. You don't know where players are going to, so these values will constantly change. So with that said, I've got 10 players that I think you should be looking to buy, and I've got 10 players you should be looking to sell at this current moment. So we're going to talk the buys. Let's talk the fun stuff. Now, the first player I'm going to talk about is going to be Rashad Bateman. Here's the deal. Even with Lamar's situation going on, Bateman still has the talent. He still has the lack of competition against him besides Mark Andrews that allows Bateman to be obviously the wide receiver one on this team and see plenty of targets his way. There were some injuries. There was injuries to Lamar. There was a lot of things that didn't contribute and help Bateman at all. Now, currently, Bateman is going to be, I would say, potentially a really good wide receiver two on your team. So, with that said, there are going to be some teams that will not be letting him go, or at least not for cheap. I think his value is at his best right now currently because of the injuries and the uncertainty what's going on. There's obviously rookies that people are trying to grab, and the fact that Lamar may not be playing for the Baltimore Ravens, the value is there. If you can get Bateman, I'd say a mid-second to late second is kind of where I would spend my draft capital on getting Rashad, because I think based off of where you're going to see other players in those particular spots, I don't think there are better receivers in that particular area in the mid to late second round of this upcoming draft. That's it could always change depending on obviously your league mates and how they draft. But if I can get a 206 to 212 range for Bateman, I'm buying him for that. I think that's a great value. Maybe you have Bateman as a depth piece. Maybe you could probably sell him as well, depending maybe some running back depth. But for me, Bateman right now is a current buy. Another receiver I want to mention as a really good buy is going to be Elijah Moore. Look, Elijah Moore, still one of the more talented young receivers in this league. I had high expectations. I think a lot of people had high expectations of what was going to happen last year with Garrett Wilson there, Elijah Moore, because Elijah Moore started showing up. And then the whole quarterback situation happened. The whole offense in general started happening. And unfortunately, Elijah Moore was kind of the odd man out. Garrett Wilson performed well, and I still believe will continue to perform well. Then the hype of Elijah Moore went kind of back up with the whole Aaron Rodgers rumor. Right now, still nothing's going on with Aaron Rodgers. So I think him being traded to Cleveland was the best thing. And a lot of it had to do with the fact they kept adding players. Allen Lazard, right? Rumors of OBJ. There was a lot going on that I felt they were really pushing Elijah Moore out of there. I even made a tweet out there that I felt like with all these news and things happening, Elijah Moore needed to be treated better. And the fact that he went to Cleveland, opposite of Amari Cooper with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, I think was a great situation. I think they're going to utilize him properly. And realistically, you should still be buying him. I got a few shares of him in probably about 3 or 4 leagues that I didn't have him before. I spent a couple second round picks, not 2, but again, second round, I thought the value for Elijah Moore in the second round, where he was being drafted probably in the first round previously by other leagues, by other teams, again, the value was there. It just totally made sense. If you can get him for a second round, maybe a third, I don't think you can. But a second round, I think, is totally worth grabbing Elijah Moore, depending on what your roster looks like. Now, we're going to switch this up a little bit. I want to talk about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy right now is expected to be the QB1, right? I think with the 49ers right now, the fact that they spend so much to get Trey Lance, the fact that right now Trey Lance had injury, you have Purdy, who actually did really good. Obviously, the injury is a concern, but he should be back ready for camp. Purdy's expectation is going to be QB1. There has not been any rumors necessarily as far as Lance being traded. So I think depending on who has Purdy in your league, they may feel differently depending on what happens and what you're able to trade him for. Purdy's going to be a little bit tougher. He's not going to be like Elijah Moore where you gotta get him for a second round. Purdy will be tougher, okay? But again, he averaged 2 touchdowns a game. He had a great connection with Ayuk. He had a great connection with Kittle. And realistically, in a super flex, I'm spending, I would say, a late first round on Purdy. That's probably the most I will spend on him as far as draft capital. I'm not spending it early. And the reason for that is because if I've got an early first, I'm going after a Stroud or a Bryce Young or something like that. So, but if I could get Purdy for a late round because your quarterbacks are gone, you need to get somebody, I think it's totally worth it. I think he'll actually be a pretty good surprise. Now, another player I want to mention is going to be Jake Ferguson for the Dallas Cowboys. Look, tight end position is such a hard position. I've got another tight end I'm going to talk about as a good buy in this as well. But Jake Ferguson, as far as my favorite tight end right now to buy, is going to be him. You probably can find him in a lot of your waivers. I was able to get him in waivers probably about 3 or 4 different leagues based off the fact that Dalton Schultz is back up. He wasn't really talked about. And a lot of people, he was definitely under the radar. But the fact is, he's going into this offseason as the tight end 1 for the Dallas Cowboys, who have a really high-powered offense, even with Kellen Moore gone. Schultz was a big security blanket for Dak Prescott, and I think that's only going to continue with Jake Ferguson. And realistically, that talent of Jake Ferguson, the fact that they were able to let Schultz go and not be necessarily overly concerned at least, really tells about the ability of Ferguson. Hendershot's another, option for Dallas, but I think Ferguson's going to be really the guy. And really, if you guys watched any of the interviews like Travis Kelce did, he really talked highly of him. And the fact that he mentioned him as a rookie that he's really looking at now going into his second year. Ferguson is definitely something that it's going to be a good either waiver wire pickup or a really cheap buy into the league before the season starts. Because if Dallas does not go after a tight end this draft, which I don't expect them to, Ferguson is now going to be cementing himself as the tight end 1 in this high-powered offense. So again, try to buy him as you can. Another player I'm going to buy is Alexander Mattison. Mattison has always done a pretty good job filling in when Dalvin Cook was hurt. Dalvin Cook rumors of being traded is still pretty hot. It's still a possibility. Nothing's happened yet. I think a lot of these trades you're either going to see the day of the draft or afterwards. So right now, Mattison is at that really middle standpoint. If you have Dalvin Cook, you try to grab Mattison. If you don't have Dalvin Cook, you should still try to grab Mattison, because if Dalvin Cook does get traded, if Vikings don't go for running back in the draft, which there's a good chance because there's a lot of depth, Mattison becomes a solid RB1 in this offense. Obviously splitting carries, and understandable. A lot of teams play with 2 running backs, but Madison has done a really good job in this Vikings offense, and I like him. I think you can get him at a pretty good price right now. I've been seeing him going out in a lot of trades, and I've seen some pretty good value for him. I don't think people are overbuying him. I think to get him at the right price, so I like Alexander Mattison. Now, Russell Wilson is a very interesting buy. I don't think you're going to get Russell Wilson cheap. A lot of people got him last year in startups, or they traded for him before, or they just happen to have had him for a while. Still probably believe in Russell Wilson. And the fact that I bring him up, though, is because the fact is, I think for Russell, I think this offense is going to change. Obviously, with Sean Payton being the new head coach, a lot of people are super excited. I'm not completely sold on Sean Payton being the reason why Russell Wilson becomes better. But I think being in the second year, I think getting more and more familiar with his receivers, even though there's rumors of these guys possibly getting traded. We'll see what happens with Judy and Sutton. But the fact is, I like what Russell can possibly do for this offense. I still believe in him as far as being a very good quarterback. I'm not expecting him to be a QB 10 or higher, but I do expect him to be a solid low-end QB1 or obviously a really good QB2, especially in Superflex. You have to understand, in Superflex, the quarterback value is so high. Russell is somebody that maybe you had somebody that is in a rebuild mode, right? They're rebuilding their team. Russell kind of really stunk it up for them. They had high hopes last season, didn't really do well. They've got to try to get rid of some of these older vets, and you're a team that is ready to win now. I'm going after Russell. I'm not overspending unless he's absolutely the only piece that you really need. But let's be honest, it's football. Anything can change. But I'm definitely going to buy him, and I believe his expectations are getting higher. There were signs of him doing really well. He did really, really good against Kansas City, for example. Both times he played against them, he was a top 8 quarterback. He has the potential. He has the ability. There was just a lot of unnecessary nonsense, and I think Sean Payton is going to make that a little bit easier and kind of get him back on track. This offseason, I think he's got a lot to prove. He's very quiet right now. That is a good thing. There was so much noise with Russell Wilson last season. The fact that he's quiet, I think is a great thing. So I like him as a nice little buy. Another player is Marquise Brown. Hollywood right now will be the biggest benefit of the whole Hopkins situation. Whether Hopkins stays, I still think it benefits him. Whether Hopkins gets traded, which is the most likely choice, Hollywood becomes obviously the clear wide receiver one. Now, with Murray being out, obviously due to the injury and missing probably most of the first half of the season, nobody really knows who's going to be really throwing to the receivers for the Arizona Cardinals. New offense, right? You've got a new head coach. So there's a lot of uncertainties. And I think with that said, a lot of people are going to be selling Hollywood Brown at a pretty good price. If you can grab him, he's still fairly young. You can get him at a good price. I'm taking him again, a nice mid to late second round this year, or a third round added to it if need be, I think is worth the value of getting Hollywood Brown. Again, if you're a team that is needing that extra depth, I'm not saying he's going to be your top 2 wide receivers, but I'm adding him if I have a flex or a wide receiver 3 or filling in for buys. And he's got that super, super young talent that I think is going to help in Dynasty. And when Murray comes back, it's only going to help. So again, he is somebody I'm buying. Now, my favorite receiver that I'm buying this offseason that I'm at least trying to is KJ Osborne. Osborne did really well last season in between filling for Adam Thielen. And even when Adam Thielen was back, KJ Osborne had some really, really great games. He had some amazing games last season. So now he's going to his 4th year. He's still pretty young, opposite of Jay Jetta, who obviously is the best player right now at the wide receiver position. It's only going to get better, right? The last 5 games, he was averaging 17 fantasy points. It's amazing. He was targeted 7 times a game. And the fact is, they moved on from Adam Thielen, who's now going to Carolina. Really says that Osborne's the guy opposite of Justin Jefferson. So I like KJ Osborne. He's definitely somebody I'm going after. I think his value is going to start slowly going up. So if you can get him now, I think it's going to be the best time to grab him. I think he's probably going to be the cheapest. Realistically, we'll see how this draft goes. But I think he's going to go clearly into this offseason and into camp as the wide receiver 2. And an offense that's going to be throwing the ball a lot. Let's be honest. That's just the way the Minnesota Vikings are. So I like KJ Osborne. Number 9, I've got Mac Jones as a nice little buy. I know there's a lot going on with Mac Jones. He regressed, which obviously had to do with the fact that you had Matt Patricia, your defensive coordinator in the past, become your offensive coordinator. The fact that Bill Belichick is trying to trade him, which is the craziest thing right now as far as rumors, really affects Mac Jones. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people aren't sure what to do with him. Now, if he stays in New England, he's now got Bill O'Brien as his offensive coordinator. They picked up Juju this offseason. They got Mike Gesicki, who I'm going to talk about in a second. And Max showed some signs. He averaged 2 touchdowns a game the last 3 games. He was averaging top 15 as far as QB goes in the last 3 games. So he's got the potential. He has the sign. He's got to get utilized properly. You're going on a team that I feel like New England, I'm not really sure what their identity is at right now. Like, you've got Ramondre Stevenson, who's a good back. You let Damian Harris go, which is understood. You let Jacoby Myers go because of price, but you got Juju for the same price. And I honestly will take Jacoby over Juju. I know that's my opinion, but I think Jacoby's a better talent, at least consistently. So I'm not really sure what's going on with New England, but I think with the uncertainty and everything going on and Mac Jones, underperforming drastically, I still think in a super flex, he's got really good value. I am going after him. I think this is his best value right now to go after him. So I'm going there. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Mike Gesicki, he's a buy I'm going after. Tight ends are such a hard position as far as fantasy goes. And most people are in rosters where you have to have a tight end, right? So Mike Gesicki, very talented. He was not being utilized at all in Miami. They just didn't throw to the tight end. And when they did, he was blocking more than he was obviously receiving. So with the lack of weapons for New England and the fact that they do utilize the tight end a lot more often, and if Mac Jones does stay, we'll see how things go. I like Mike Gesicki a lot this season. He might even be on your waiver. I doubt it, but he might even still be on your waivers. So if I can, I'm getting Gesicki for a cheap price, and I'm definitely getting him on my roster. Now, here are my 10 players I am absolutely selling, and I'll give you the number 1. I think Calvin Ridley is a sell. I think so many people are hyped up with him now coming to Jacksonville in an offense that's got Trevor Lawrence, you got Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, you got some good running backs in Etienne, you got Ingram. I mean, there's so much. And with that said, because there are so many targets that Lawrence can throw to, it worries me with even Christian Kirk, but more so Calvin Ridley, because the fact that he's 2 years removed from playing. Very talented receiver. And I think his value right now is, because he's coming back, is at his highest. I could be wrong, make it even higher, but I think his highest right now, the fact that I can get probably something for him. I've traded Calvin Ridley away a few times this offseason just because he's a little bit of an older receiver. I was able to get a second and some depth at positions I needed, and I think that was more valuable than keeping a receiver that I'm not really sure how he's going to go into this offseason. So Calvin Ridley is the number one guy as far as my, I would say, sell at this moment. Now, another player I'm going to sell is going to be Javonte Williams. I know a lot of people are going to give me crap in the comments, and I understand. I am not 100% sold on Javonte Williams. Last year I was. If you watched any of my videos, I was a buy. Problem is, his injury is a concern. The fact is also that he has not really played a full season as the true number one, right? He's always shared. College, he shared, right? He was opposite of like Michael Carter, for example. Like he didn't always be the guy. And there was all these crazy rumors this offseason as well about his injury. Oh, he's going to be into the third or fourth week in the season. Oh, no, he's going to be ready by the first week. I don't know if it's just some kind of ploy or thing that Denver's trying to do, but the fact that there's so many different rumors of what was going on with his injury and where's he at in his rehab worries me a little bit. Now, I'm not selling Javonte cheap, but I am still selling him and getting some good value because people are still going after him. I'm able to get, I think the best pick I was able to get was the 105, which I plan on obviously getting, Bryce Young or Stroud, depending on where these guys fall. I doubt they'll be there at the fifth spot, but getting a quarterback like Anthony Ridge, I'm, again, super flex. You got to get those quarterbacks. So I'll take that because running backs, there's such a good depth in this draft that I can, get a good running back in the second round in that offense. So he's definitely somebody I'm selling. Another running back I'm selling is DeAndre Swift. His value has dipped significantly. And I hate to say it because I'm such a Swift believer. I'm still have kept him in a few of my leagues. He is going to be a little bit harder to sell because of the fact that he's injury prone. I wouldn't say prone. I hate to use that word, but he has had some injury concerns. And then, of course, the Lions brought in David Montgomery, which tells you they're still not fully committed to DeAndre Swift, which worries me a lot because he's got great talent, but he just can't stay healthy. He's got the ability to be one of the best running backs in this game as far as a fantasy goes, and he just can't stay on the field. And unfortunately, the best ability is availability, and right now Swift is not that guy. So I'm trying to sell him if you can. I understand holding on to him just to kind of see what's going to happen, but I'm moving on. Another running back is Khalil Herbert. I got a lot of running backs as far as selling just because this depth is so good in this draft. Khalil Herbert, I understand Herbert's value right now at his highest because of David Montgomery leaving. Herbert did well when he filled in with Montgomery. But Foreman coming in does worry me. I actually like Deontay Foreman. I think he's going to eat out some of Herbert's shares. And Herbert is unfortunately not a guy, I don't know if I believe he's going to be constantly getting the ball. So he's somebody that because his value has gone up, try to sell him at a good value. I was able to get rid of Herbert for an early second in a again, just trying to get some other running backs depending on where they fall. I was able to get some depth at wide receiver. So again, moving players to just kind of fill the roster makes sense. Another player is Jordan Love. I feel bad for this guy because I think he's finally getting his chance to really prove to Green Bay that he can be the quarterback because of the whole Rodgers situation, which still has not happened, so we're unsure what's going to happen. But the fact is, his value is still very high as QB1 for the Packers with all the Rodgers news. And the fact is you could probably still sell him at a good draft pick. You could probably get some maybe a 1 and 2 or maybe a 1 in a player or something like that because his value is still there. Who is Jordan Love throwing to? Yeah, you got Romeo Doubs. Yeah, you got Christian Watson. But even with those guys, Rodgers wasn't great last year, and that's Aaron Rodgers. What makes Jordan Love any different than what they experienced in the past? Christian Watson has some lapses. He drops the ball. Doubs disappeared in several games. I just don't know if I'm sold completely on this receiving core to really give Jordan Love the love that he deserves. I do think if you have the ability to keep him on your roster, sure, he's kind of that standstill where you maybe can hold him. But if you're trying to add some draft capital, whether it be this year or next year, you've got some great quarterbacks already. You got 3 solid, and Jordan Love's just kind of there as your 4th. Then sell him. This is the time to sell him. His value is the highest right now because if he has a bad, I would say 6 weeks into the season, he's playing horrible, man, you're going to see that drop and you're going to wish you had gotten some value for him because at that point, who knows what's going to happen. Now, another player is Rachaad White. I like White, and I've been able to still buy him in a few of my drafts, a few of my leagues. But here's the honest thing. White did not have great efficiency. He struggled. He was under 4 yards a carry, which is not great for a running back. He's a good, talented receiving back. I don't see him being the bell cow for Tampa. They're going to bring in a running back. So, and the fact is now you've got Baker Mayfield at quarterback, which defenses are obviously going to be more focused on the run just to kind of see how this, and the Bucs just didn't run the ball at all. I'm not really sure if White has any real strong value, but I like that his receiving capability still brings in fantasy prospects, like people trying to go after him and get somebody who's young who had some potential, showed up pretty well last season when he even shared the ball with Fournette. But again, he wasn't like, wow, right? He wasn't like a Breece Hall. He wasn't Kenneth Walker, those type of things. But White played well. But it's funny when you look at players like Tyler Algier, or you look at Dameon Pierce, the guys that I think people probably kept him and White and all them in that same tier. Those guys did phenomenal, and White just because it wasn't quite there. So I'm looking to move him. Another running back I'm moving is Rashad Penny. 2 injury concerns that are going on for him. His injuries are always the biggest issue with him. And the fact that, he's going to Philly, he's got a good offense. They run the ball really well. You got Jalen Hurts to account for. Now you've got, obviously, Rashad Penny. I am a big Gainwell believer, and I think Gainwell is going to take some of those touches away from Rashad Penny. And the fact is, if Rashad Penny can't stay healthy, he's no good to you. You've got to start moving players like that away. He might still have some value because somebody believes in his talent, and he had some signs, and he went to Philly now, and who knows. But if you got somebody who's like, man, I'm really interested in your Penny, move him, get rid of him. At this point, there's no reason of keeping him on your roster. If he plays a full season, has a good year, it's part of the game, unfortunately. But I'm not taking the risk of keeping him if I can get him off my team. Another player I'm moving is Trey Lance. I know we talked about buying Purdy. I'm selling Trey Lance. His value is still pretty high. If you look at any of those trades out there, people are still getting ones for him. People are still getting really young players for him. Lance's value, because of the draft capital that the 49ers have spent on him, still keeps Lance up here. Even though Lance has not done enough to really show that he's the guy. And the fact that Purdy did so well last year probably is going to be the QB1, which is what everybody's expectation is. I'm moving on for Trey Lance. Get the best value out of him. If you have to keep him, but I'm going to get him before the fact that Purdy takes the job and Lance's stock just constantly drops unless he gets traded to a team that uses him. That's the only way you're going to keep his value up there. I'm moving him right now. Now, Miles Sanders is another guy I'm moving. Sanders did really well last year. It was a career year for him. Played really well. Kind of even surprised me, even though I had some good expectations, not high expectations. But here's where I have a problem with the whole Miles Sanders situation. Yes, he played very well with the Hurts-led offense. The fact is he still finished RB15 last year in PPR. There were games he did well, but there were games he just kind of disappeared. I just can't do that. Like, if you look at his numbers, Miles had 3 great games that averaged about 29 points a game. Take away those 3 games. Just take away those 3 really solid games. The rest of the season, he averaged 8.37 points a game. Why would you keep him? Why? And now you're going to a Panthers offense that right now currently doesn't have a QB. Obviously, they've got the first pick overall. And I understand having an offense that's going to try to utilize the running back. You still got Chuba Hubbard back there, who I think still is going to have some value in touching the ball and getting some shares. But the fact is, Miles Sanders was 8.37 points without those 3 really big games. I'm moving him. Sell him. This is the best time to do it. Now, the last player I'm selling right now is Jacoby Myers. Even though I mentioned he has, I think, a better talent than Juju Smith, I love Jacoby's talent. I really think he should have stayed in New England. I understand it didn't work out that way. But the fact going to Vegas, who has Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, that worries me a little bit because I still think they believe in Renfrow. Now, Renfrow's going to obviously be still the slot guy. You got Jacoby on the outside of Devontae, and maybe benefits just because Devontae gets the targets, but you still have Jimmy G at quarterback, and I'm not sold on Jimmy G. Does he win? Sure. Is he okay? Sure. But Jimmy G was part of a really good offense because of the offensive coordinator and head coach, not because of his talent. And Maybe he proves me wrong, but I think Jimmy G is not the guy, and unfortunately, it's going to hurt Jacoby Myers. So I'm trying to sell him if you possibly can. So those are my 10 buys and sells as far as your dynasty goes right before the draft happens. Again, we'll be revisiting this stuff after the NFL draft because there's going to be some crazy stuff that's going to happen. It's going to shock you, and you're going to be like, oh no, I got to start blowing up my team. But these are guys I'm definitely trying to buy or sell. If you guys have questions, or maybe you have some trade questions down below, hit us up in the comments. If you guys enjoyed the content, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated because we'll be doing dynasty content all off season, and of course, getting you ready for any redrafts if you guys do that. And if you guys did enjoy the content, also make sure you hit the like button. It's greatly appreciated. Share the stuff with your friends, maybe not your league mates, but at least your friends that might benefit from this. All right. Make sure you check out our other rankings. We got our quarterback, running back, and wide receiver rookie rankings. We'll be dropping the tight end one later this week. So again, check those out as well to get you prepared for the NFL draft, which is coming up really soon. All right. So sub, like, and I'll check you guys out next time.